Hello, thank you for joining our APAM question chat. We have here our wonderful expert, Jason Finkelman, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the H-1B visa process and information. So, Jason, take it away.
I appreciate that and appreciate you having me out. Just by way of quick introduction, my name is Jason Finkelman. I'm an immigration attorney. The focus of my practice is on employment or business-based immigration. So working with U.S. employers that are sponsoring foreign nationals for jobs to work here in the U.S. and then helping them through the green card or lawful permanent resident process or citizenship process. I work with international entrepreneurs, investors, startups, people who want to bring their visas to the US, or bring a business to the US and help them get visas to do that. And so a lot of my practice is focused on working with students who, upon graduation, are looking to stay and work in the US and helping them navigate the complexities of the immigration process. So that's just a quick background on what I do. Um, and I know you have a lot of specific questions, so we can jump into it, take it from there.
Wonderful. So, one of our big questions from our APAM membership is really just what is the H-1B visa? Who can apply for it? How do folks get connected to this process?
So the H-1B visa is a temporary, what's called non-immigrant visa. And it basically has two requirements. Requirement one is there's a US employer that's offering a foreign national a job that at a minimum requires a bachelor's degree to perform the functions of the position. And it's not up to the US employer to say, yeah, we require a bachelor's degree for the job. It's actually up to the US government. So the US government basically has a database of all the jobs that they say require a bachelor's degree, engineering jobs and science jobs and computer jobs, things like that. But to say, oh, I got a job, being a secretary or being a barista, no, those aren't going to be jobs that the government says require a bachelor's degree. So that's requirement one. Requirement two is that the foreign national holds in his or her hand a bachelor's degree or higher that relates to the position they're going to be working in. So the government says, show me in your academic transcript what you learned and how that knowledge is going to be applied to the position duties. They don't care about work experience at all. It's showing, what you learned and how that knowledge is applied to the position duties. So those are the two requirements. But the H-1B visa is unique in the sense that there's a cap or a limit on the amount of visas that are issued each year. And that number is 85,000. Each year, in the first week of March, actually starting as of yesterday, March 4th, going through the second week of March, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, makes these 85,000 H-1B visas available for everyone in the world to apply for. But already, within the past 24 hours, USCIS has gotten more than 85,000 H-1B visa registrations. So eventually, after next week or the week after, they're going to say, hey, we've already got more than 85,000 H-1B visa registrations. We're going to take all those that we receive and put them in a computer-generated lottery system. We're going to let a computer select at random the 85,000 that will then be invited to submit a full application. And then if that application is approved, the visa becomes active to use on October 1st. It's good for 3 years initially, plus a 3-year extension thereafter for a maximum of 6 years. Those that aren't selected, sorry, try again another year.
Fascinating. So we see a lot of our public policy scholars who are in the US on H-1B visas currently are finding it challenging on the job market, talking with other hiring organizations who are understandably confused with the requirements and how they've shifted. So can you share with folks that are confused with this process, like what are the basics for um, accepting someone who has an H-1B visa currently? Will they have to pay for it to be renewed? Those items.
Yeah, so there's a lot of intricacies to this H-1B visa. And understandably, employers typically go, whoa, 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 this is all super confusing. We don't want to handle this. When in reality, there's just a handful of things employers should be aware of, and foreign nationals who are seeking to get an H-1B visa should expect an employer to have questions about. So I want to highlight a few of them because they're the most common one. So the first one, the one I probably hear the most, first question is, well, hey, I'm a foreign national. Do I need an employer to sponsor me for this visa? Can't I just do it myself? And the answer is no, you must. You have to have a U.S. employer to sponsor you. You cannot sponsor yourself for an H-1B visa. So that's number one. Number two, employers will often say, hey, look, I don't understand this H-1B visa stuff. If you're interested in this and you want to pay for it, fine, we'll support you. Go ahead and pay for it. Unfortunately, immigration laws are strict, and they say that an employer must pay for all of this process, filing fees to the government, attorney's fees, because it's an employer-sponsored visa. So if that comes up, I often tell people, hey, you're going to have to say, unfortunately, the immigration laws are strict. You're going to have to pay for this, the cost associated with this employer. Um, the other areas that I'm seeing a lot of questions about is employers saying, well, I heard about this thing a few months ago that says I'm going to have to pay $100,000 for an H-1B visa. So let me clear some of that up because it's very, very murky. So in September of 2025, President Trump made what's called a proclamation, which said, hey, I'm going to make employers that are sponsoring people for an H-1B visa, in addition to paying all these other filing fees to the government, a $100,000 fee on H-1B visas. Well, when this proclamation came out, it was very vague, didn't make a lot of sense, and it was caused a bunch of chaos. No one really knew who this applies to, how it applies, who you pay for, when you pay, are there exceptions? It was just very, very vague statement. What ended up following several months later were more policy memorandums that cleared up who this $100,000 fee may apply to. And what's really important to understand is today, there's very few people that this $100,000 fee would apply to. Specifically, we think, because it's still not very clear, that this $100,000 fee would only apply to new H-1B visas for individuals who are physically outside of the US applying for an H-1B visa for the first time. Another way to look at that is that if you're here in the US already, perhaps as a student with an F1 visa, or as a trainee on a J1 visa, and you have an employer that wants to file an H-1B petition for you, they would not be subject to the H-1B visa $100,000 fee. So it's important to let employers know, hey, you may have heard about this $100,000 fee, but it is crystal clear that I, person who is here physically in the US already, would be changing to this H-1B status, and as such, I would not be subject to this $100,000 fee. That's the big one. The other issue, which is that, let's try this, the fourth one, the last big one, is actually a very recent change. And it's a very important one. It has always been, prior to this year, the way that the lottery works is someone enters the lottery, whether you're working for Facebook or Google or Microsoft or a one-person startup company, didn't matter your nationality, didn't matter anything. Everyone got one chance to play in the lottery, except for those individuals that hold a U.S. master's degree or higher. They essentially get two plays in the lottery. This year, the administration changed that policy to make this year's lottery a wage-weighted lottery. So essentially, as one step in this H-1B visa process, the employer has to agree to pay you, the foreign national, what's called prevailing wage for your role in the geographic area. So it's a way for them to make sure that they're not getting cheap labor and they're paying you, the foreign national, a fair wage. The U.S. Department of Labor has an online database of all the jobs in the geographic areas, and they list 4 different wage levels, 1 being the lowest, 4 being the highest. And those wage levels are based on experience, knowledge, and a whole bunch of other factors. But this year, the White House said, we're going to change the lottery system. We're going to change it so that if an employer agrees when they file this registration that they're going to pay you this level four wage, meaning the high end of the scale, you're going to get four plays, four chances in the lottery. They're going to pay you the level three wage, three chances in the lottery, level two wage, two chances, level one wage, one chance. So all of that is to say, the other consideration you want to have with the employer is to say, hey, great, I'm thrilled you're going to enter me into this lottery, which is very important for me to stay and work for you. But another factor on this, depending upon how bad you want me to stay and how bad you want me to continue working for you, is what is the wage you're willing to pay me on October 1st if my registration is selected and my application is approved. Because if you're willing to pay me that level four wage, we're going to get four chances. Level three, three, two, two, one, one. So that's the long answer to your question, that those are the four big issues that people should be made aware of when talking to employers right now on H-1B sponsorship.
Thank you so much. That was such a great and clear explanation of those things to consider. So thanks. Another question we have is, can a small think tank or research institute realistically sponsor an H-1B visa, or is it too administratively burdensome for them?
It is not burdensome. It appears on paper or when you read about it to be this administrative monstrosity and this challenging thing, when in reality, it's not. Again, to break it down real simply, there's two phases, and you only get to the second phase if you get lucky in phase one. So, taking it to its bite-sized component, level one is simply putting this applicant's name into the lottery, which isn't too challenging to enter them into the lottery. Then there's just an element of luck. It's out of your hands as the employer, it's out of the foreign national's hands. Maybe you get lucky. If you don't get lucky, that's it. Game over. Try again another year. If you do get lucky and then you get to submit it, it's not overly burdensome. You're basically, again, showing, hey, we as the employer are offering this foreign national a job at a minimum that requires a bachelor's degree. And that's clearly stated by the Department of Labor. Hey, this is some computer science role. This is a chemist role, whatever it is. Cool. And then second, here's this foreign national that has a degree and an academic transcript that shows that they have the knowledge to perform that. So it shouldn't be as intimidating as it appears. That's not to say it's easy. And obviously, working with qualified counsel can help you to prepare a comprehensive and robust application to meet those eligibility requirements. But I wouldn't let just the reading of an H-1B visa scare you off, even if you're a small one-person startup company, which is a lot of the people we're working with, or a small think tank or something like that.
Wonderful. Thank you. So this question comes from, an APAM member, and you mentioned how this process looks for folks that are currently here on an F1 or a J1 visa, but how does this process differ for students who are job candidates who entered the US on that F1 or J1 visa or current H-1B status? And how does that process look for them when they're seeking employment? What should they communicate to those employers about, it not triggering that $100,000 fee?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I typically take a more practical way of looking at this and talking about this with a potential employer. For many students here on an F1 visa, upon graduation, they typically get something called optional practical training, OPT. It's a program that allows them to work, sort of like an internship, for up to 1 year, in some cases up to three if you're graduating with a STEM degree, in relation to your field. I typically say, if you're doing a good job in the job you're doing, you want to have a conversation as early as possible and essentially right now, because the lottery is open right now, with that employer to say, hey, look, I like you, employer. Hopefully you like me. There's a end period to this OPT. 12 months from now, 6 months from now, it's going to end. If you like me and I like you, the only way potentially for me to stay here and continue working for you is if you take a shot in this H-1B visa lottery for me. Now, that's up to the employer to decide whether they do that. Hopefully, you're good enough that they want to go through that expense of sponsoring you. If you're able to sort of pass that first gate, then I typically say you may hear them go, well, wait a second, there's fees and $100,000. And no. First off, to be clear, employer, and now I'm speaking as you, the foreign national, no, there is no $100,000 fee because specifically, this does not apply to me because I am currently here in the US. I have F1 status and I am changing my status from an F1 to an H-1B. So it does not apply. Yes, there may be fees, application fees, attorney's fees that go in with this, and we could speak to an attorney about that. Um, but those are fees as part of it that you'd have to be willing to spend, but it's not astronomical like $100,000. Um, and then, again, the soft sell is we can just enter ourselves into this lottery, employer, and we may not get the H-1B visa. Okay, we took our shot. We did our best to try. So there's very little harm in at least trying to enter that lottery to see if you have a chance to apply for that H-1B.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
And I know that we're in the process right now with the H-1B visa lottery currently open, but is there an ideal timeline where an employer should be like preparing these documents? That may help some of our folks that are entering the job market next year.
Yeah, usually the H-1B visa lottery opens within the first 2 to 3 weeks of March. So let me be clear, it is open now. It closes, I think, the middle of March. I don't have that date up in front of me, but very soon. So in the short term, if this is something you want to potentially do and have a shot, you need to run right now and speak to an employer today about getting that lottery entry in. Otherwise, you're absolutely waiting until 2027.
Hmm.
Now, if you haven't graduated yet or you're watching this at a later time, then yeah, the time to start having those conversations usually is, mid-January to mid-February. So that way we have everything ready to go and get everything filed by beginning of March or middle of March. So you have a shot in the lottery.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jason, for taking the time to talk with us today. I'll be sure to include your information if our APAMers are interested in talking to you more. They can contact you via email or phone at your office. But we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, and maybe there'll be some follow-up conversations in the future.
I super appreciate you having me out. I realize, for many people right now, this is a tense time and a time filled with anxiety. So, to the extent anyone has questions, wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to do the best I can to alleviate some of that anxiety and stress.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jason.
Got it.